For quite some time now I was asked on Discord, on Facebook, on YouTube, in person, how do I paint my PanOceania and what's the color scheme. So instead of answering over and over and over again and sending people the color schemes, I decided to record a painting tutorial and show you a step-by-step guide on how do I paint PanOceania and my approach to the process. I always start painting the model by painting the base first, and for this one I use Rhinox Hide as the base color. I dilute it very heavily with water and paint all over the base, trying to get it into all the crooks and crevices. After it has completely dried, I go to Vulcan Green and heavily dry brush all over the base. When I mean heavily, I mean very, very heavily. Once the green has dried, I add a little bit of white to the green, any white will do, and once again dry brush, this time trying to only hit the raised areas. For the final highlight, I add more white to the green mix, and this time I try to hit only the edges. After that I try to pick out all of the stones, and for that I use Downstone Grey as my base color and then highlight the stones using Layer Administrator Grey. Once the grey has completely dried, I go to my washes. I use Biltong Green and Agrax Earthshade. The washes are going to give a little bit more depth and life to the base. I use the green to wash areas around the stones and to touch the stones a little bit with the green, which will create a moss effect. And while the green wash is still drying, I go with the Agrax Earthshade and add it to the still wet green. Now that the base is finished, I can finally start painting the model. And we will start with the exoskeleton, and for that we need to black out all of those parts with Abaddon Black. When the black is fully dried, I add Downstone to the black on the wet palette, mix it up, keeping it on the darker side, and I pick out all of the raised areas on the model. Now we can finally start highlighting, and I add more Downstone to the previous mix and start highlighting the parts where more light will be hitting it. And for the final highlight of the exoskeleton, I'm going to use pure Downstone, and I'm just going to touch all the corners of the previously highlighted areas. And now it's time to paint all the other colors, which are blue, black and white. And for the blue I'm going to use Incubi Darkness. I'm going to go over the model with 2 to 3 thin layers of Incubi Darkness to make sure that it's evenly distributed. For the white I use a mix of downstone with an administrative gray, leaning more heavily on the downstone, and once again I block out all of the white areas, going with 2 or 3 thin layers of the mix. And now we finally reached the point where we're going to start highlighting all the white parts. And the first highlight I'm going to use pure administrative gray. At this stage I'm trying to envision where the shadows will be and where the light source would hit the model. So again you can go back and forth with this color and the previous darker layer mix if you don't like the placement of the lighter color. And this is going to be the basis of my painting process of adding contrast by building layers of lighter and lighter colors. For the second highlight is going to be administrative gray mixed with white, and in total there's going to be 3 layers of this highlight with more white added to each layer. Once again I'm trying to hit only the light areas of the model, but trying not to hide the previous layers that were already applied. If you want more darker areas, you can go back with the previous darker layer and just blend it in. So it's just a matter of going back and forth with all of your previous colors that you already applied. And for the final highlight of the white is going to be pure white, and here I'm trying to only touch the most raised areas and where the light would hit the most. And finally we're coming back to the blue, and here I'm going to mix Incubo Darkness with Soto Green, leaning more heavily on Soto Green. Again, I'm trying to build up layers of light by leaving a lot of the Incubo Darkness visible, because it's going to be your darkest shadow on the model. Once that has completely dried, we're going to go and add the second highlight, and that's going to be a pure Soto Green. And for the next 3 highlights, we're going to mix pure Soto Green with white. Once again, with each layer, we're going to be adding more white to the mix. And the final highlight is going to be very, very heavily leaning on white. With the last 2 highlights, especially with the very last one, you want to hit less and less of areas, because otherwise the model is going to be looking the same, and the final highlight should be only on the most highlighted areas. And for me, in this model is going to be the chest, the leg pads, and some of the corners or edges on the legs and back. Now we're back to the black parts, And for the very first highlight, I'm going to be mixing Abaddon Black with Dawnstorm, leaning heavily on the Abaddon Black. I'm going to be highlighting only the raised areas, keeping the very darkest shadow completely black. And now we're back to the layering process. Here we also have 3 layers of highlights, with adding more downstone to the previous mix. Painting black armor is going to be different from painting blue or white one, because we want it to actually look black. So if you over highlight it with gray, it's going to look more gray than black. So by adding the highlights, you want to touch less and less and less area than you did with the white or the blue part. And for the very last highlight of the black, we're going to use pure downstone, and as you can see here, I'm just touching the edges of the raised armor areas. Now I'm going to be using a mix of Mephiston Red and Abaddon Black, leaning more heavily on red for the eyes, lights and bulbs. And for that I'm going to be using 2 passes of thin layers of the mix. And for the highlight I'm going to be mixing the Mephiston Red with pure white. We're going to be using 3 layers of highlights, with adding more white to each layer, until we reach, for the final layer, a very white pinkish color. And for the eyes especially, I'm going to use a 4th layer by adding more white to the mix, making it more white than red. It's even a very light pink, and I'm going to just touch the bottom halves of the eye sockets. Finally, for the glow effect. For that I'm going to be using pure Mephiston Red, but you can also use the previous mix of red and black. I'm going to dilute it very heavily with water. I almost have no paint on my brush when I apply it, and I'm just going to start layering it on all the edges where we painted the light source. Keep in mind that you want to have the paint very heavily diluted, otherwise it's going to be too thick, and if you think that it's too thin, let the previous layer completely dry before you go over with a second layer on top. And to completely sell the light source effect, I'm going to go to one of the mixtures of red and white. It's up to you which one do you want, and I'm just going to gently touch all the edges of the layered red. For the guns it's going to be very easy. I'm going to block out the gray parts with downstone. And for the first highlight, I'm going to have a mixture of downstone with administrating gray. It's going to be a 50-50 mix, and once again, as with all the previous steps, we're going to start layering the color by keeping the darker color as a shadow. Now for the second highlight, I'm going to be using pure administrative gray. I'm going to basically start edge highlighting all of the previous areas. and also start to apply it as a additional light layer in small quantities. And for the very final highlight of the grey part, I'm going to mix administering grey with pure white. I'm basically going to touch only the corners of the lightest parts of the gun. For the black part of the gun, I'm going to mix downstone with Abaddon black, leaning very heavily to Abaddon black, almost an 80 mix of black to 20 mix of downstone, maybe even 90 to 10. For the first highlight is going to be downstone, just pure downstone, and it's going to be very heavy on the contrast. For the second highlight, we're going to use pure administration grey, and here I'm trying to edge highlight the lightest areas and add light source where it needs to be. And for the very last highlight, we're back to the mix of administrating grey and white, and basically I'm just touching the lightest corners of the gun. And this is the finished model. I'm very happy with the final result. I think it came out wonderfully. I am also very happy that I finally managed to film this tutorial video as promised, because this was the third attempt of me filming it. I also hope that you enjoyed this video, that this tutorial was helpful for everyone that asked for it. Please enjoy, and if I was of any help, I'm happy. So happy wargaming to you guys, and I catch you in the next one.